Yeah. So this session is regarding workload to be migrated to the cloud. So how do we start our journey? So definitely each of the company will be having a complete migration approaches, end-to-end migration approaches. Different company they give a different names, different frameworks. Like Capgemini, it is called as a cloud choice. IBM calls it as a IBM Innovate, Cloud Innovate.
Fresh, would you mind putting this presentation in presentation mode?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, sure. So
No, you're sharing your screen, but the PowerPoint has to be put in presentation mode so that you can see on the entire screen.
okay. So,
F5, you can press F5.
okay, sorry, you're sure. Sorry for that. So yeah, so what I was trying to say, I'll just reiterate it. Different companies having a different migration approaches. My approaches will be same, but the name will be different. The way IBM is called, it is called Cloud Innovate. Capgemini, it is called Cloud Choice. So I'll be taking it from the assessment. How do we perform assessment basically? So normally, whenever we are going to do the assessment, different clients will be having a different requirement for the assessment. So we start with our called architecture principle or the guiding principle. So sometimes the client will be having a requirement. They want to close the data center itself. They wanted to go with the approaches like SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, private cloud, on-premise. They wanted to take the application framework, technology framework to the latest version. Probably it is, they wanted to take it to the 4.6. Probably they will be having a SQL Server 2010. They wanted to take it to the latest version, risk nth version, or whatever the component we are going to use it in the application. They wanted to take it to the latest version so that they can have a more agility into the future. So these are the things we speak to them. Apart from that, we ask them, do you have any preference towards the cloud vendor? Probably they may have already chosen as a AWS as the cloud vendor, or sometimes they will give an option for us to tell me that which provider is going to suit to us. Sometimes they will say that I'm planning to go with the PaaS as a database, but probably I have an Oracle and I don't want to switch over from the Oracle to the SQL Server V12 or SQL Server. So in that case, definitely we need to go ahead and tell them that probably that here the RDS service of AWS may be suiting it. So multiple things we ask them, and accordingly we create our guidelines. On that basis only we start our journey and give our assessment answers to them. So we ask some questions to understand whether this application can be taken to the cloud or not. So question can be like this, that do the application have any device integration? So if application is having any device integration, then definitely we cannot take this application to the cloud, so we will not be having a feasibility. If the application is having any high latency sensitivity, if they have too much, right, then we cannot take it to the cloud. And if application is not virtualized and client wanted to willing to take it to the cloud, then definitely we'll be having a constraint of virtualizing this application. Apart from that, we can ask them, do they have any requirement to keep this application on-premise? If they have some compliance rule, definitely we cannot take this application to the cloud. So these are the questions which I'm talking around now. These are like a quick way of finding this application can be cloudable or not. These are the quick way of finding it. Or it can be having a rule like constraint like a data residency. The meaning of data residency is that this application data needs to be kept into the country boundary or the region boundary. So it differs client to client. A time was there when India was not having any data center as well as the Azure too. So in that case, we need to go ahead and give a different solution. The way if the data center is existing in the country boundary or the region. So it answer differs, assessment result differs. Or we can ask them that some client will be telling that if I have any application is getting decommissioned in 12 months, then we don't need to go and do the assessment because it will a waste of money to them. We ask them that what is the way of authentication and authorization currently it is having. If the client is having our Active Directory as O365, then definitely it is going to help us into doing the authentication performing. Or if the client is going to willing to have a single. Apart from that, if they have in the client itself will be defining that what type of confidential data they are planning to take to the cloud. So on that also, assessment results varies. Do we have any question on this slide or any input? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. We are good. You can move.
Thanks. Or we ask them also that is their application, the license, whatever they have it, is it cloudable or not? Sometimes now we were working on one of the application, they have one type of the Oracle license, and if we are looking for some other type of a license, then we need to take care while the costing also, that what is going to cost. So as part of the assessment, we give a complete roadmap. What is the expenditure they are going to incur in migrating this application, and what will be they are going to save it going forward as a part of roadmap. Definitely they share that what is they are spending as on today. So single sign-on I have already covered. And what is the technology details? So just to think that currently they are using an application maybe 2.0, probably they wanted to go 4.6 or database multiple. So that all comes a part of the guiding principle which we adhere to, as well as infra details for all environments. They'll be having a different environments, and the infra may be different or it may be same. So when we are going to plan for the provisioning, we need, because finally why people they go for cloud? They go for cloud because of having much of the benefit as well as saving the money. That is the one of the factor to take this application to the cloud. We ask, is the application sending an email? So if application is sending an email, then we need to find it out that how application can continue sending the email. Probably we can go ahead, and if it is using Office 365, we can go ahead and use their Exchange for sending the email, or else we can go ahead and asking for purchasing a marketplace app like a SendGrid for sending the email, or we can find something else better than that. Or is application making any payment? Do they have any gateway? If they have a gateway, then we need to go ahead and opt for it. And we check with them, is application have any third-party component? Because if that application may have multiple components, probably some of the component may not be the cloudable. We will not be having the cloudable version of it. Then we may have to go ahead and with agreement with the client, we need to find some other component which can go and meet its requirement. Or we can get a cloudable component and we can go ahead and use it. Or is application any log or writing to the disk? So as we know that cloud is a multi-tenant, and the VM or with all the details will keep on changing. It is not fixed. So we need to go ahead and we need to go ahead and address in a different way, like going to the blob, or we need to go with the file storage. So these are the things we ask it. Do we have any question?
So I have one question that is on the payment gateway. So is there a list of that you consult or the provider of payment gateway that you have, or how do we get to know what are different payment providers?
Yeah, sure. So when we go ahead and do, definitely as part of the assessment, we ask them which all language you are planning to support this application first of all. So I was working for the application, and it was supposed to get supported into Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India, as well as Pakistan. So we need to check that which all payment gateway we have and which all language it is supporting it. So accordingly, we can go ahead and choose it, and we can go and tell to the client.
Okay. But do you have list, or is there like an article which we can refer to see the list of all payment gateway provider country-wise? A service map, something?
currently I do not have, but in one of the pre-sales when I was working it, my client was using the payment gateway. So sorry, I'm not able to recall it, but I have suggested for the payment gateway for them to implement it.
Thank you.
Any other question, any input? Shall I
So
go to
at
the
this point of time, are you sure like what kind of solution you are going to provide, or you are having that in later slides?
Yeah, definitely. So whatever I have spoken till now, I have just taken a generic question. So definitely I can, from my side only, I will take some application that I have not definitely have not written on the slide, and I can go ahead and tell that what is the approach which I am going to take it, or how we go ahead and decide it, that what where application we place and how we are going to implement it. So that all details are there in the upcoming slides.
Okay, thank you.
So is it okay if I move to the next slide?
Please.
Thanks. Yeah.
So you have not done the capacity estimate yet, right? So you don't want to know what is the capacity before in the assessment itself?
Yeah. So hope are you, could you please could you please elaborate your question if you don't mind?
So you didn't ask question how big is their infrastructure and what kind of, how big is their database and what is the TPU required and all those things, so that you can decide on the what kind of solution you are going to provide. Like one question you had a confidential data. So if you have some PCI zone or something, then you want to keep that at the in-house rather than moving it to the cloud. So, but I didn't see any question which could estimate the capacity of the infrastructure you're going to provide as a cloud.
I think, he has mentioned that application infrastructure requirement. That was there one question. If you look at it, what is the technology details and infra details? So probably that would cover the capacity, right? The technology will cover the technology aspect. The infra details will cover the capacity and the, different requirements on the infra side.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So when we are getting this point, definitely we need to talk more about that so that we can go more clarity. So whenever I send a questionnaire, so working with the passage of the time, we have seen that if you are sending a question consist of 100 questions, definitely you may not get a proper answer especially when you are doing with a assessment of 1,500 applications. So what we have done we splitted the questions into 3 parts, which goes to the first goes to the business, first part goes to the business, second part goes to the technology, and the third goes to the support. So when the needed question or when the correct question goes to routed to the correct persons, we get the proper answer. So as our friend has pointed out about the infra details and all, so we definitely ask them that what is the database size in each environment and what they are planning to grow it. So just to think, there were once upon a time we had a limitation Azure SQL v12 as a 1 TB, then 3.2, now it is 4 TB. So we need to our solutioning. Whatever we have, it definitely has to depend on that and how we are going to have it, a database sharding or other method we are going to have it. So when we are talking about the infra, we ask what is the CPU, what is the RAM they are using it, each and everything we ask it, so that definitely we can go ahead and have a scalability into the place so that we can get a maximum benefit of the cloud. So, is all a question answered? Or did I really answer your question?
No, that was helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So when we are doing the assessment, we can have a diagram displayed like this. We will be getting a segmentation from the client, which all application we can go ahead and do the assessment. We can do the assessment, and the feasibility we can have it. And as we know that, as I have told you, that the approach which client wanted to follow, it may vary from SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, private and public cloud. So definitely we need to ask them that what they are looking for and what is their intention behind it. I have seen sometimes the client wanted to go with the PaaS approach, and they wanted to do it in a very less time, because they wanted to close the data center immediately within very short span of time, and they do not have a budget. So definitely in that case, we cannot meet the pass. I have an application of the client where the application was using the SQL Service Broker, and SQL Service Broker is not currently supported into Azure SQL V12. As we know that whatever we have into the cloud, they are trying to get a benefit of the whatever they are trying to replicate all the facilities what they have in on-premise, but still cloud is growing. We do not have all the functionality of on-premise into the cloud. So the similar way, SQL Service Broker, we do not have into the Azure SQL V12. So we went to the client and we told them that we can go ahead with ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, we can go ahead, and with the event we can go ahead and implement it. But it requires a lot of code changes, but client doesn't want to go with that. So finally we go with infrastructure as a service. So when we are seeing the application, we may be having an option for application to get retired. Probably it may not be getting used. Or I have some applications where I have seen that we work for an application for around 1 month, and then we came to know this application is not getting used at all. So when we are doing a real assessment, we will get multiple things to know about that. Even while assessment, we have found it, and that after working for one application for a very long time, we came to know this application is already into the cloud. So that all things will happen, last minute surprises. So the application can go as a IaaS, where we can go ahead and rehost it. Probably it may be an AIX and client wanted to go with Windows or some the better version. Or we can have in IaaS PaaS, we can have a remediation. So suppose you wanted to take this application from the .NET version, you wanted to upgrade it, or sometime we'll be having a need. When I was doing a pre-sales, application was in such a way that client wanted to have all the 3 approaches. They wanted to give approaches for 3 of them, like SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. And the application was a Windows Platform Foundation, which is thick client application. So I gave an approach to them that it can go as the same way. We can go ahead and host it into the VM, and we can use the click once. Using the click once, whatever you have a executable, we can go download it into our local laptop, and we can go ahead and use it. So that was the IaaS approach I have given them. Regarding the PaaS, as I told, it is a thick client and we cannot have it in the PaaS. So I asked them to at that time to go ahead with MVC.NET and rewrite the complete code. And it asked me to give a SaaS. It gave me to give me the SaaS solution for it. So I went over there and found some of the SaaS applications, which I gave it to them, and I can, due to confidentiality, I cannot disclose it. So these are the approaches. Final things, we go ahead and get it after the assessment. And on that basis only, we go ahead and create a roadmap and share it with the client. So as part of the assessment, first of all, we go ahead and get the answers done. We create an PPT into 2 parts: as architecture and as is architecture and to be architecture. Just to think a very simple example, we have an application which is having a 3 tiers. First is the UI layer. Probably, I will take the very simplest example. The UI layer can become as a web app into Azure web app. We can go ahead and use it, or definitely we have multiple options. The database, probably we can go ahead and take it to the Azure SQL V12. We will be having some other interfaces and all. Then we can go ahead and try it to find some cloudable solution, and we can give it to be architecture. So what will happen? The client will be very clear that what is the Azure architecture and what is the to be architecture, so that we will not be having last minute surprises when into the next phase. So this is the way we work. So definitely, when how to go and pass an IaaS, that will be definitely we can go ahead and see the later point of time. On what basis we decide which application can go for PaaS, IaaS, or private or public. Do we have any question?
Yes, one question I have is you talked about latency, right? So latency could be unique to every application. Some
Yeah.
application could be latency tolerant or can tolerate high latency. Some application, will require ultra low latency. So how do you determine, how do you extract this information from the application team? Because in the real world, when I go and talk to them, they don't have any idea. They just say that I need low latency, but they don't have real. How do you help them to determine what is the latency requirement for their application?
See, sometime when the client wanted to have extremely low latency, in that case, we definitely say that we cannot take this application to the cloud. So this is the way we work.
So when you say latency, there are two latencies probably I look forward to. One latency is end user. When the end user is accessing my application, that will have a latency. And then another latency that probably I'm concerned of, or I think about is latency between the components of application. So between web and server, between web layer and application layer, and those kinds. So I mean,
So,
sometimes.
Neeraj, I can answer. I would like to answer that question. So, what happens whenever we do the estimate or you consult the customer, we get a baseline from them. So, they provide us the baseline of the latency. So, it's now into our estimate. How do we want to meet that baseline? If client said I need a latency of like 2 seconds, so we have to work with the cloud vendor to provide us the two components on the same data center so that latency could be minimized. And then again, we have a more cost-effective solution with the vendor, and they can provide us the better solution for the latency purpose. So your question, like how do we manage latency? So we have to get the baseline from customer first, and then we can set the expectation with the cloud vendor.
Okay, so yeah, so you answered one part of my question. That if they don't have latency, we can ask them to create a baseline and then get that information from the networking team, right? And that's the baseline probably can help us. So that's latency is it could be between server to server, and that latency could also be for other components of application. But how about end user latency? How do you extract that?
So you'll have to identify your user base. So say for example, if your user base is in India, so you want to utilize the India Asia region server so that your user get less latency. And same way, like same application is shared with Europe region or America region, so you want to deploy your code to even that region, so that and you have to tell your vendor that whenever request comes from this particular region, do the proper routing, so that using that you can control the latency for the end users.
Sometime that may not be depending on what solution we have, that latency still, if you put in India, and if I have my traffic routed over express route, and I'm using express route from America with circuit sharing, my traffic from India will go all over to US. From US it will come back to India.
Yeah, so if you have a regional routing, so people who are accessing from US, they'll be routed to the US server. So using that, it can be minimized, right? And you can have a distributed system, the whole application, or in this case, consider it as a container. So the whole container should be at the regional blocks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because at time what happens, we don't have mature practice. When I talk to application owners, they don't have any idea. They say I need low latency, but when we ask for a definite figure, they say I don't know.
Yeah, I do understand we are coming from Neeraj when we have introduced the client, and they also say, yeah, we need low latency. Like they really don't know what
do you mean by low latency? 100 milliseconds,
Yeah.
200, 300, 400, 600. So they don't have those figures.
Okay, sorry for hijacking, Priyash. You can continue.
Please.
Yeah, no problems. It was a useful discussion for us. So, shall I continue to the next slide?
Yeah, please.
Thanks. Yeah, so basically what we do it, whenever we are done with the assessment part, we go ahead and plan it for we create an HLD basically. So we decide going to have it everything into the details and needs to be documented well in advance properly. So this application will be having definitely it will be having the application overview. So basically HLD and application overview got overwritten. So definitely it will be having an application overview, and we'll be having the details what all things it consists of in scope. So what all things we are going to make a changes, where and all we are going to make a changes, and what all things we own it basically. And definitely we'll be having the second section as out of a scope. Just to think this application is getting a data from some other applications. So the changes which needs to come from the other application needs to be done by the other application side. We don't own it. So such things, or if some other version upgrade or something is dependent from the other side of the application, or it is expected from the client, we don't own it. So that all things will be part of the out of a scope. Then we'll be having the application technical architecture. So just to think, we are going to have in some of the applications which can be we can go ahead with the PaaS, or we can go with an IaaS over there. So some of the application I have worked over there that it wanted to use an database in IaaS, and the web app, then the UI side was into the web app, which we have used it. So how to connect it? So we do have some way of doing that is AAC we can use, or VNet peering we can use, or VNet integration. We can go ahead and use it. Apart from that, when we are doing the technical architecture, so we can have just to think UI. Probably we may go with a web app, or we may go with a microservices architecture, which is supported by Azure Fabric service over here, or we can go with the containerized approach, or we can go with Azure Functions currently. So these are the way we can go ahead, but definitely we need to ask the client that what they are willing to, because each and everything is having its own benefit and it is having its own lacuna. When we wanted to go with the microservices architecture, definitely it is having a benefit that we don't have to completely have a scalability into each of the component. We divide the component into the different functions or the operation, and we create a microservices so that whichever part is required to have a scalability, we can have a particular scalability and we can save the money over there. As well as we can go with Azure Functions too, where we do not have to handle the scalability either in automatic way, the way we go ahead and do that, or the manual way. It itself takes care of the billability. So as when it is required, we can go ahead and configure it. So ultimately we need to ask the client what are willing to do it and what is the approach. If they wanted to go with containerization approach, because they are not knowing that today application can be in Azure or tomorrow it can go to the GCP. So accordingly we go ahead and create. Now just to think that application is a UI, we may go ahead and use the web app. If it is a database, probably we can go with the hybrid approach where they wanted to keep the data, highly confidential data, they wanted to keep into the on-premise because they don't want to share it. Then keep it into the on-premise. And apart from that, we can have, just to think this application is having multiple interfaces, and they wanted to go ahead and get the data from there. So when I was working for the pre-sales, one of the application was there which was having around 15 of the interfaces, it was using it, and they wanted to keep it into the on-premise. So I went over there, I used Azure Data Factory in installing the Microsoft Management Data Gateway into these servers, and we can, using the ADF, we can get into that one format to another format, we can get a data using the connectors, so that we can have the similar flow the way we have into the on-premise, we can achieve it. So these are the things we do it. So as part of assessment, I missed to say that when we are doing the guiding principles, sometimes client will be having a requirement that if you are moving by one of the application to the cloud, probably you have to move all the application interfacing to the cloud, else you don't need to move it. So our assessment depends on that requirement again, so that we can give the assessment part. So we can see that, and apart from that, just to think it is like we are going with a database, or we are having some other things into the infrastructure service, then we need to go and have everything details like VNet, subnet, ACL, all details we need to have the traffic manager, each and everything should be written into the HLD. So basically HLD is nothing. HLD is a document which we are going to promise to the client and which we are going to implement it going forward. So it is an agreement between vendor as well as the client, so that we're not having last minute surprises. So these are the things we do it, and we create a complete architecture diagram, technical diagrams. We go ahead and do that. In this one only we define that what type of we are going to have all provisioning details into the place. Suppose you are going to have a web app, or you are going to have a VM. So one of the client was having, we were having around 28 GB of RAM. So in the lower environment, like we can have in development, QA, UAT, we can go with A7. When we are doing into the production, probably we can go with a D12. I think depends client to client. We can go ahead to the place, and we can have completely defined over there. Scalability place, that how we can go ahead and use it. Suppose just it is like 40% of the scalability, the RAM is getting used over there, utilization of the VM web app. They can have into the place the 20% extra, we can have it. Thing we can have, and so this is the way we go ahead and do that. Yeah, so these are the details are there. And integration architecture, the same thing which I explained you, that how we are going to integrate with the other interfaces of the applications. We can have some sharing of the document. If they are looking for if they want to have the application accessibility is very fast, we can go with the file approach. Or if they wanted to have they are looking for the cheaper solution, they are not having the speed, they are not looking for highly speed, then we can go with the blob, with the different approaches into the concern.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So what do you cover as a part of application technical architecture? So in a HLD that you have, what components come in application technical architecture? There's like database and web servers and all those come in there, or it's modules, each module performing certain tasks come in there? What exactly is there in the application technical architecture?
So basically, when we are talking about the application architecture, we will be having we can say, to a very frank, we'll be having each and everything which we can present in one of the diagram. So I would definitely love to answer it. Just to think that I will be having two type of users. Probably we'll be having admin users, which we can have express route over there. We can have firewall.
So do you depict all the components of an application at module level, like UI, database, the business logic, and then the processing module and all those, and then you show the interaction of these components? Or you just mention database and web server and show the interaction in a graphical format, or use in the user authentication, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so basically, Neeraj, whatever you have told, the bigger size, we cover each and everything. Definitely, I would love to say that what all things we use it in our technical diagrams. Just to think, I have two type of users, which will be like end user, outside user, how they are going to connect it. The inside, we are going to inside the admin user, which are looking for the definitely like express route is benefit. We are going to have express route into the place. And then we'll be having some web app, how we are going to have a web app, how we are maintaining the instances. We make a diagram of it. Apart from that, as you told, that we'll be having a database into the place. So how we are going to have a database, that will be get depicted over there.
So there is slight, I'm not understanding it. But for me, an application architecture would translate into an infrastructure architecture that you refer to: web app, express route, connectivity, right? But for me, my understanding was that application architecture is more at module level, at functionality of each of the module, and then the application architect work on that. Then an infra architect will come into the picture, take that and translate into the actual infrastructures needed to support that application. So do you include the infrastructure architecture as well in application technical architecture, or that's separate?
Yeah, see, what we do we show that how the data flow is happening between the different components. Just to think, we are using some batch job, then where it is going to fit in. If you have a VNet, so So all these things we depict into this.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, obviously the infrastructure architecture and application architecture finally get merged into one document. Sometimes we call it solution architecture document. Sad that, in a couple of in other industries they use this term, but eventually the infrastructure architecture and the application module level interaction also get merged into this single document. So, okay, I get it. Because for me, it's like I thought application technical architecture was slightly different format for me rather than solution architecture document. But I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, whatever we can go ahead in one of the diagram, we can do it. We go ahead and depict everything. Like if you're having a PaaS web app or if you're having IaaS, VNet, Subnet, everything we go ahead and apart from the database side, or if you are using some batch jobs and all, we give a details about that in one picture only. Definitely, we cannot write all the provisioning details over there. So that all things are not there mentioned over there in these diagrams. Yeah. So. Shall we continue now to the next?
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we talked about the authentication. Say we do an assessment of legacy application, which is the Kerberos authentication. So when we move into the cloud, we should go with the federation, the SAML and the ADFS. The few of the legacy application which doesn't support, in that case, how do we meet this challenge? How do we convey this customer, to get into the SAML? I believe the federation is the best approach in current cloud deployment. So yeah, my understanding, just want to see how this legacy application moving to the cloud and meet this the challenges.
Sure, we would love. Yeah, we would love.
Maybe I just add on to, and how difficult it is to change the authentication mechanism of an existing application from Kerberos to SAML. Does it require a lot of recoding? I'm just with your experience.
Sure. So we will definitely cover all these questions. So let me continue with this. Definitely we are going to cover in this authentication part itself. So when we are doing the security remediation, we need to talk about that where they have an Active Directory. Are they using Azure Active Directory so that we can go ahead and have a authentication into the place from Office 365? We can go ahead and do that. Sometimes client wanted to keep the data, all the details into the on-premise only, but they wanted to, or they are willing to migrate all the identities to the cloud. We can go ahead and use a AD Connect and all. So these are the things we can go ahead and have an ADFS into the place. So the question was there from the Neeraj side that if the application, you can have an example, if the application is a form-based application, it is using it, and probably we wanted to go with a single sign-on, or I wanted to go with a SAML-based authentication. So how can we go ahead and use? So in this case,
question was how difficult it is with your experience. You have to do a lot of coding and changes, or
see, definitely love to do the answer for this. So basically, when we are going to change the approach for the authentication, because when we are going to the developer, definitely a developer will be well versed with the application. The effort is very minimal. It is not like that when you are having when we are having the form of authentication in the place and you wanted to go with integrated Windows authentication, or we wanted to go with the SAML approach, effort is less. So definitely when we talk to the client, when we talk to the developer, or if your developer itself is a vendor for you, they will exaggerate it like anything, that these are the things we have to do some bigger changes into this. But when we talk as an application side of this, the effort is very, very minimal. Because I am from the application side of cloud. So, and I started my career as a .NET developer. So definitely I'm aware about that.
Yeah. So the one thing, the form-based.
Yeah, we are unable to hear you.
Go ahead, Anjani. So yeah, please.
So shall I continue, or do we have any question?
I have one question, the final question. So still, so as you mentioned, the form-based authentication and the application. So say in a certain situation, the form-based authentication can't be moved or the code change not be possible. How securely we can still host an application in a cloud? What are the best practices we still do? As a the form-based authentication, that a password which saves on the any of the database, how do we protect that? Is that challenge we have come through in this?
Yeah. So basically, when we have some situation like this, we can have a SAML based we could have a SAML based. We need to enable it basically, and we can go ahead and use the proxy as well as ADFS, and we can publish this application.
Maybe I can take that question.
Yeah, please.
So the question, Uday, was that if SAML is not a possibility, right? So we want to enable lift and shift, and we want them to use legacy authentication, which is Kerberos, or on-prem authentication, which is used in form-based. How do we secure that while moving into cloud? That's necessity, but at the same time, I want to secure it, right? So some of the security measures that you can put in is don't use SQL local auth, use Windows integrated or Windows account to authenticate to SQL. That's one. The second thing is as a security measure, never ever put your username and password when you connect to SQL database as a connection string in config file of your application, rather than outsource that. I would say store it into Azure Key Vault. So your connection string, like your database connection strings, should be stored in Azure Key Vault, and then your application can be granted and authorized to access that, and it retrieves those connection string at the runtime. Right? These two things. The third thing is, when you move into the cloud, obviously security is of paramount importance. So you will enable, which I think it's also on the slide, encryption. Especially on the database, on the SQL side, you will enable TDE for those. So obviously these kind of security measures that you will put in, and you will also make sure that if it is needed, you can also implement TLS, transport layer secure, for communication between web server and the database server, so that it's fully encrypted. So these are some solutions probably you will.
Yeah, that's great, Neeraj. So the key vault and the solution. Yeah. So I was in a discussion of this the key vault. So this was the conclusion which we are trying to make here in the application. So thank you. That's the same you have said. So thank you for it.
Yeah, and this is Anjani. So adding to the person was discussing currently. So obviously TD is something which is a fantastic thing when you are on Azure, and the same with the SAML. So there are multiple like ping federated, like ping identity, and other SAML providers are there. They have their adapter for Azure, and you can directly connect it and then use it. So it's not a big deal, even if you do a legacy authentication type, or you use some third-party SAML providers to authenticate and connect to your application.
Yeah, thank you, Anjan. So you're talking about the ping adapter identity. Yeah. So that's.
But wouldn't that be applicable to SAML auth? Will that convert between SAML and Kerberos and vice versa? I doubt.
Neeraj, so there's this kind of a single sign-on application with form-based. We can use the MFA as an additional layer to the the login portal.
Yeah. So that's for MFA. But I was more thinking from the Kerberos authentication perspective. How will Ping Federate help us with Kerberos authentication? I'm just trying to understand.
So most probably we have ideally we have worked with the way we're discussing that we connect to the SQL through Windows authentication, which is almost like which is service account which we create, and then obviously encryption is through certificate. Kerberos, I doubt. I don't think there will be a problem like converting to from a SAML to Kerberos. You may have to in the middle to connect to talk to Kerberos and then the SAML provider. So at your side, you whatever the SAML adapter or the SAML client adapter that you in the middle, you need to configure that to talk in the Kerberos form.
Kerberos to SAML is like, is possible with the delegated authentication, constrained authentication, Kerberos to SAML. But SAMLs to Kerberos is not possible. That's what I know. And there is no product today which can really do that. We were evaluating, we were trying to use that, but we don't see anything which is. So that's why I was interested if ping identity or ping federate can do that.
And that's what I said. So you cannot do it directly. So you have to play with the cookies, and in the middle you have to identity from one system to another.
Yeah.
Secure cookie.
Sorry to hijack your.
No props. It's a very useful discussion and good learning for each of us. Yeah. So already discussed regarding the authentication. We can have authorization into the place, probably if they are using a membership provider into .NET, or if they have handled it by creating some groups and all, we can have similar thing in the place and we can continue. Regarding the encryption, already Neeraj a lot of details he provided. We may go ahead with the blob and we can go ahead and encrypt it, or AD encryption, 3D encryption. Multiple things we can go ahead and do that. And for the UI side, we can have SSL into the place. So the things which we go and do that. So in authentication, definitely we can have MFA into place also, but MFA also will be required a lot of details from there because client may be having a different requirements. So we need to have a deep that also, and we can, if they require, they can have a single sign-on into the place, or they can have an access panel, because nowadays multiple clients, they wanted to go with access panel because they are getting a single window. They can have they can go ahead and navigate all the applications. So these are the benefits which we have it for taking this application to the cloud. So do we have anything to discuss in this slide now?
No, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. So definitely when we are doing the migration, we need to take care of the storage. So what storage I'm going to have it, and how the data is going to be stored into the different zones, and what is the business continuity plan which we have it, because we are seeing that currently for some time the storage of AWS itself was down. So how we can go ahead and handle it. So all these approaches are also written over there. Apart from that, we write about the database, that what is archival mechanism which I'm going to have it, how we are going to have a backup or the archival mechanism into the place, how we are going to get benefited from the paired region. Because in India currently we have Pune as well as Pune and Chennai, they are the paired region. So we can go ahead and into the place, we can have it in the place. And apart from that, we can do the different regions there. And apart from that, we are done with is going, what is the CI, continuous CI and CD, continuous delivery, a continuous deployment should be there into the place, and what are the tools which we are going to use it, so that we can have a maximum benefit of the DevOps, and what is the approach if I'm going with the microservices architecture, what is going to have the, what all the benefit it is going to have it. So all these details we write it into our the HLD. Then coming back to the data migration. So how the data can get migrated from the on-premise to the cloud. So normally when I use it into our development, SQL Server itself only gives an option for going ahead and doing the script generation. We can go there to the database. We can go to the tab menu and we can script generate a script where the script can go ahead and create a script for the all the text creation and all. They do it. Or they can have a generated for that all the data to be updated, or we can go ahead and create a script which will be compatible to the JSQL V12. We can take this script and run into the JSQL V12 database, and which will have each and everything to the place. But that definitely it will not going to work properly into the product. So we have certain tools like SAMW, SQL Azure Migration Wizard, SSDT and all. So we can go ahead and use these tools and we can migrate all data to the from on-premise to the cloud. And apart from that, which all migration tools I am going to use it. That all things needs to be written over there. So once the application is migrated to the cloud, what is the testing approach which I am going to have it? How we are going to do the testing? So that all inputs we take it from the testers and we mention into the HLD. So we'll be having the NFR, which is the definitely it is a very important part of the HLD. So definitely we ask them that we guarantee to them, to the client, that what is your existing SLA, we are going to meet it. So these details we write it, we take a latest performance report from the on-premise application, and we remediate and migrate application to the Azure cloud. So these all things we take care of it. We use diagnostic tools so that we can have each and everything into the place. So these are the things which we did in HLD. So again, I'm reiterating, HLD is nothing but all details which we are going to implement into the next phase. So this is the way we go ahead and implement it or develop it. So finally, we go ahead and share with the client and we work in agreement with them. So I can give an example, a very nice learning which we have it. Client was having a design architecture principle. They wanted to go with ARM portal. They wanted to go with ARM basically. ARM script, they wanted to have it with ARM portal. That was the requirement which we have it. But we were using Azure Cloud Services. And as we know, Azure Cloud Services is a part of the classic portal, and it only supports the ASM model. Azure Service Manager, ASM portal only it is supporting the scripting way. So in that way, we got caught over there and we had a nice learning over there. We need to switch each and everything approach from the Azure Cloud Services to Azure Web App. So definitely we need to work with the client and we need to stick to them the requirement, and with the passage of time we make our correction into the HLD. So do we have any question?
So how do you define recovery point objective? Can you give some specifics and lines for recovery point objective?
Yeah. So in this also that we need to understand from the client that whatever they have the set they have currently into the place, and again we need to talk with we need to consult with the vendors and all, and the same way we can go ahead and implement it. So definitely we need to be into the agreement from the cloud vendor as well as the client which is asking it. So same like SLA or the latency we discussed.
Okay, and so I mean, what really consider when you ask, okay, what is your RPO? So do you further subdivide into smaller specific items like your database consistency to be 5 minutes or 1 hour? You want your